Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, the quiet hum of the ship's engines vibrating beneath his boots. On the main display floated a single message, text that carried the weight of destiny. His hands trembled slightly as he read it, and he knew that nothing about humanity's future would ever be the same. The Galactic Council had spoken. The words were calm, almost elegant, but their meaning was devastating. After just 50 short years of contact, humanity, still a newcomer to the stars, had been judged too dangerous, too disruptive, too aggressive. To the great civilizations that ruled the galaxy for millennia, humanity's curiosity and restlessness were not signs of vitality. They were symptoms of a deeper, irredeemable flaw. The message was an ultimatum, stripped of nuance. 2 choices. No more. The first, humanity would accept neural pacification implants. A technology that would silence aggression itself, cutting war and violence out of the human mind like a surgeon removes a tumor. The second, complete isolation. A forced exile from galactic civilization. No trade, no technology exchange, no contact. Humanity, once welcomed, would be cast adrift among the stars. Jake Morrison reread the words, hoping he had misunderstood. But he hadn't. This was not negotiation. It was judgment. Within hours, the message reached Earth. At Deep Space Command, Admiral Lisa Cooper studied the alien dossier, each detail a reminder of what humanity was up against. The Villani, tall, radiant beings with slender frames and a confidence honed over thousands of years, were the architects of faster-than-light travel and masters of energy weapons. They were wealthy beyond measure, controlling the richest star systems. To them, leadership was their birthright. The Zafrans, by contrast, were one mind stretched across billions of bodies. Their hive consciousness was alien in the truest sense, each ship, each soldier, each fragment of their society acting as a neuron in a vast, calculating brain. Their bioships could heal themselves, adapt to new threats, and outlast nearly any foe. To the hive, stability was sacred, and humans were chaos incarnate. And then there were the Corvani, the ancients. They lived for thousands of years, their crystalline ships slipping in and out of normal space like phantoms. Their technology was so advanced that even the word magic did not seem inappropriate. For 3 millennia, they had been the Council's memory, its caution, its silent wisdom. Together, these species had forged the Galactic Council and imposed order upon 1,000 worlds. War had not touched their territories in over 3,000 years. Every species they encountered had eventually accepted the pacification implants. Violence had been erased from civilization, by consent, or by necessity. And now, the Council demanded the same of humanity. At the White House, President Danny Parker gathered his top advisors. The atmosphere was heavy, thick with the weight of decisions that would echo across centuries. General Paul Martinez stood at the front of the room, his voice steady but grim. "Sir, we have 127 combat vessels," he said. "Across all colonies, all fleets, all reserves. The Council, if they choose to mobilize, can field over 2,000. Their fleets outgun us, outnumber us, outlast us. If this comes to war, the numbers are not encouraging." Dr. Karen Hayes, the chief xenobiologist, spoke next. Years of careful diplomacy had given her insight into alien psychology, and her expression was one of deep unease. "They don't see this as punishment," she explained. "To them, this is a gift. They believe they are saving us from ourselves. They cannot fathom why any intelligent species would cling to aggression, when peace has brought them prosperity." Her words hung in the air. A gift. That was how the Council saw it. A cure for humanity's flaws. For hours, arguments raged. Some advisors insisted the implants should be accepted, at least temporarily, better to survive now and seek a cure later. Others demanded resistance, even if the odds were hopeless. A third group suggested that isolation might not be so terrible. Humanity could build quietly in the shadows, cut off but free. Meanwhile, at Luna Station, the council representatives waited. High Arbiter Velnash of the Vallani paced the diplomatic halls with serene patience. To him, humanity's hesitation was predictable. Young species always resisted at first. In the end, wisdom prevailed. Ambassador Zokthal of the Zaffron sat motionless, his mind dissolved into the hive. He could not grasp why humans had not yet chosen survival over pride. Logic demanded it. An ancient counselor Morin of the Corvani, his crystalline body glowing faintly in the dim light, simply observed. He had seen 47 species resist, 47 species surrender. In time, the pattern always repeated. Humanity would be no different. The council envoys met with Dr. Hayes for informal dialogue. They spoke softly, as if addressing children who simply needed reassurance. The implants are safe, Velnash said with a graceful smile. We have refined them over millennia. They will not change who you are. They will only remove what no intelligent being should need, the compulsion to violence. Dr. Hayes asked the question that burned in her mind. And if someone attacks you? If a threat arises? How do you defend yourselves without aggression? The aliens looked at her as if she had asked why stars shine. My dear human, Velnash replied, who would attack us? Civilization itself is peace. Only primitives resist. Only the unenlightened would strike at the council. It was not arrogance. It was belief. To them, the age of violence was over. At last, President Parker made his choice. It was not unanimous. The vote among leaders was painfully close. But the decision was final. He would travel to Luna Station himself. He would look the council in the eye and speak the truth of humanity. The conference room was filled with alien elegance, curved architecture, flowing light, and cameras broadcasting the moment to every human world. President Parker's voice was calm, steady. We thank the Galactic Council for their generous offer. But after long consideration, we must respectfully decline both options. Humanity will not accept implants. Humanity will not accept isolation. Humanity chooses freedom, regardless of the cost. The silence that followed was almost unbearable. High Arbiter Velnash's expression faltered for the first time. Surely you understand, he said softly, no species has ever chosen isolation. No species has ever defied the council. We understand, Parker replied. We also understand the price of the peace you offer. And it is a price we cannot pay. The aliens exchanged glances. The room seemed to vibrate with ancient power and disbelief. At last, Velnash spoke. Very well. You have 7 days to reconsider. After that, you will face the consequences of defying galactic law. The envoys left in silence. President Parker remained still, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew the truth, he may have just signed humanity's death warrant. And yet, deep within, he also knew something else. Some things were worth dying for. And freedom was one of them. 12 hours later, on Nexus Prime, the council convened an emergency session. Never before had a species rejected their guidance outright. Debate filled the great assembly, but it was brief. The Vallani warned of the dangerous precedent. The Zaffrons calculated the probability of rebellion spreading if humans were allowed to remain unpacified. The Corvani elder, Morin, spoke last. In all my long existence, he said, his crystalline voice echoing, 47 species have resisted. Each required a demonstration before accepting wisdom. The humans will be no different. The vote was unanimous. The council would mobilize its fleets. 2,000 warships, the largest armada in over 1,000 years, began to move toward human space. And on the edge of that frontier, a lone human commander watched the storm approach. The declaration of war should have filled Earth with chaos. And yet, the planet was silent. In the past, nations might have fractured, governments might have collapsed under the pressure of annihilation. But in this moment, for the first time in history, humanity stood as one. The Council's ultimatum had done what centuries of politics could not. It had unified humanity, not by love, not by trust, but by the raw gravity of survival. On the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Jake Morrison received his orders. They were not the orders of defiance or desperation he expected. They were something stranger. Do not engage the enemy directly, the message read. Do not reveal the full measure of our strength. Withdraw. Wait. Watch. It was not cowardice. It was calculation. Across the solar system, preparations began. Orbital shipyards churned without rest, constructing hulls in silence, stockpiling weapons in the void where no Council sensor could reach. Fleets dispersed, vanishing into asteroid belts and gas giant shadows. Communications grew sparse and coded, the language of a civilization deliberately fading from view. The Council's scouts probed the borders of human space, expecting resistance, desperate mobilization, perhaps even reckless attacks. Instead, they found nothing. Colonies reported calm. Trade convoys traveled unescorted. Radio silence stretched for days. The silence was unnerving. High Arbiter Velnash studied the reports with growing unease. They are afraid, he told his fellow envoys. Fear makes them passive. They will beg for implants within months. But Ambassador Zochthal of the Zafrans disagreed. The hive perceives dissonance. The humans conceal. They are not passive. They are preparing. The Volani dismissed this as paranoia. The Corvani listened in silence. Deep within a hollowed asteroid near Neptune, a different kind of war was being forged. Not fleets, not armies, but stories. Dar. Karen Hayes had been reassigned, not to science, but to information. Her task was not to study alien biology, but to rewrite alien belief. Humanity could not outnumber or outgun the Council. But perhaps, it could outthink them. Her team began seeding whispers across the galactic networks, encrypted transmissions disguised as civilian chatter. Stories of human resilience, tales of impossible victories, accounts of battles never fought. A Volani patrol fleet destroyed at Proxima. False. A Zafran hive node burned at Barnard Star. Fiction. A Corvani ship forced into retreat. Pure fabrication. But the stories spread. And once they spread, they could not be contained. In markets on distant worlds, merchants argued about whether humans had captured a Council battleship. In colonies light years away, young alien soldiers wondered if their enemy was truly as weak as their leaders claimed. It was not truth humanity unleashed. It was doubt. And doubt was contagious. Meanwhile, President Parker met with the Harari, the only species that had refused to join the Council. The Harari were quiet beings, cloaked in long robes, their forms half hidden by living symbiotic organisms that clung to their bodies like shadows. They spoke rarely, but when they did, every word carried weight. "You play with fire," one of them said in a voice like whispering sand. "The Council does not forgive. No species has ever resisted them and remained whole." "Then tell me," Parker asked, "why haven't you joined them? Why stand apart?" The Harari tilted their head. Their eyes, black and endless, seemed to look beyond him, into futures unseen. "Because we remember," the Harari answered. "We remember what they have forgotten. The Council believes it is eternal, but it is not. Once, long ago, they were not rulers. They were survivors. Survivors of something far older. Something that waits beyond the edge of their maps." Parker leaned forward. "And what is that?" But the Harari did not answer directly. They only whispered, "You are not their greatest fear. You are only the beginning of it." Back in Council space, the unease grew. The Volani demanded swift action. Crush them before the infection of defiance spreads, Vanish urged. The Zaffrans calculated probabilities, their hive minds pulsing with warnings of asymmetric warfare. The Corvani elders, however, remained silent, studying the silence of humanity with unreadable expressions. Ships gathered at staging points. Thousands of them. But as days passed, strange incidents multiplied. A Vallani frigate received a distress signal luring it into a trap, an asteroid field seeded with explosives that detonated in precise sequence, shredding the ship. No human fleet was detected. A Zaffran biocruiser reported infection within its organic hull, alien spores that disrupted its hive link and drove it into madness. No trace of human presence was found. A Corvani scout entered Sol's outskirts, only to vanish without a trace. Sensors recorded nothing. Each event was small, insignificant compared to the Council's power. Yet each was amplified by rumor, distorted by fear, magnified by doubt. On Earth, Dr. Hayes presented her findings to the President. "It's working," she said. "The Council thrives on the illusion of inevitability. They believe resistance is pointless. We've cracked that illusion. Once doubt spreads among their people, the Council itself will fracture." Parker studied the data in silence. He wanted to believe. And yet, the Harari's warning lingered in his mind. Something older. Something forgotten. The Council's patience finally ended. The Armada moved. 2,000 ships, forming a wall of steel and fire, advancing toward human space with the inevitability of a tidal wave. The Vallani promised it would be swift. The Zaffrans promised it would be decisive. The Corvani promised only silence. And yet, when they crossed the border, they found nothing. No fleets waiting. No armies gathered. Just empty stars, silent stations, and colonies that seemed to vanish into shadow. It was as if humanity had dissolved into the void. "Where are they?" Velnash demanded, slamming his hand on the command console of his flagship. The answer came not from sensors, but from a transmission. Human voices, dozens layered into one, speaking a single phrase. "We are everywhere. We are nowhere. We are free." Fear is not measured in numbers or weapons. It is measured in uncertainty. And in that moment, for the first time in 3,000 years, the Council felt it. A war had begun, not of fleets, but of minds. And behind it all, hidden in the shadows of the galaxy, the Harari watched. For they alone knew the truth: humanity was not the end of peace. Humanity was the herald of something far greater, something the galaxy had long forgotten. Something that was coming. The Council Armada pressed deeper into human space, yet every victory felt hollow. Colonies they seized were empty husks. Stations abandoned, their hulls echoing with silence. Fleets never met them in open battle. Instead, their ships fell victim to traps, illusions, and whispers of victories that never were. For the first time in living memory, the Council was forced into a war it could not define. A war without borders, without certainty. A war fought not in space, but in perception. And perception was breaking. Among the Vallani, young soldiers began to question. If humanity was weak, why did they never surrender? Among the Zaffrans, hive nodes buzzed with fragmented signals, infected by human codes that sowed dissonance in the unity of the swarm. Among the Corvani, doubt spread like cracks in ancient stone. The Council had always been united by dominance, never by trust. Now that dominance faltered. On Earth, President Parker convened his war council. Generals demanded full mobilization. Admirals begged for decisive strikes. But Parker listened to none of them. His mind lingered on the Harari's words. Something older. Something forgotten. He sought the Harari once more. In a chamber lit only by starlight, he asked the question directly. What are the architects? The Harari's eyes glimmered. Their voices overlapped, a chorus of whispers. They are the makers. The first empire, long before the council. They built the chains that bind the galaxy. They shaped minds, seeded obedience, and carved fear into the bones of species. The council believes its dominance is its own, but it is not. It is inherited. A shadow of a greater design. Parker's throat tightened. And you believe they still exist? The Harari did not answer. Instead, they pressed a hand to the floor, as if feeling the vibration of something vast beneath the surface of the galaxy. They do not sleep, the Harari murmured. They wait. The war raged on. Humanity's deception deepened. Networks across the stars hummed with half-truths and phantom victories. To the galaxy at large, humans became a legend, a force of unpredictability, a defiance that could not be crushed. And in that legend, something began to shift. On worlds far from Sol, whispers spread. A Vallani worker refusing his implant. A Zaffron drone breaking from its hive mind. A Corvani child asking why obedience was necessary. Small acts, insignificant in isolation, but together they formed a tremor. Humanity was no longer fighting alone. Its defiance had awakened echoes in others. But legends cut both ways. In the ruins of an abandoned outpost near the galactic rim, a Zaffron patrol uncovered something strange. Not human technology. Not council wreckage. Something older. A structure half buried in ice. Angles too precise, materials unknown. Inside, chambers carved with patterns that pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. The patrol reported it. And then it vanished. The council dismissed it as a human trap. But the Harari knew better. They whispered of a signal that had been sent, a pulse that had rippled outward into the dark between galaxies. Something had heard. On the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Morrison stood over a tactical display. Red markers filled the map, council fleets pressing toward Sol. Yet his orders remained the same: delay, deceive, endure. He clenched his fists. We can't keep running forever. Dr. Karen Hayes, now a strategist of information war, placed a hand on his shoulder. This isn't running. It's rewriting the story of the galaxy. Every day we survive, the council's certainty erodes. Every day their people question, we grow stronger. But what if the Harari are right? Morrison asked. What if we're only clearing the path for something worse? Hayes looked out at the stars. Then maybe it's not about winning. Maybe it's about proving we deserve to stand when it comes. The council prepared its final assault. A fleet so vast it blotted out the stars, converging on Sol. This would be the end, humanity crushed before its legend could fully take root. But when the fleet arrived, they found no resistance. No ships. No colonies. Earth itself, silent. The Vallani declared victory. The Zaffrons marked the human species as extinct. The Corvani, however, remained uneasy. And then the signals began. Across the galaxy, alien networks filled with human transmissions, images of Earth untouched, fleets intact, colonies thriving. Humanity broadcast not from Sol, but from everywhere. You cannot erase us, the voices said. You cannot silence us. We are the truth you buried. We are the freedom you feared. Billions watched. Billions listened. The illusion of the council's inevitability shattered. And in the shadows beyond the council's reach, the Harari stood in silence. The pulse from the ancient ruin had spread. In distant, uncharted space, machines stirred. Structures the size of moons awakened, unfolding like petals of metal. Signals older than language began to resonate across the void. The architects were not dead. They had been waiting for a species reckless enough to break the council's chains. Humanity had lit the fire. The architects had seen the flame. In his final address before the skies above Earth filled with council warships, President Parker spoke not to his people, but to the galaxy. They came to chain us. They came to tell us freedom was an illusion, that peace meant obedience, that survival required surrender. We chose another path. We chose to stand. And if our defiance awakens something greater, so be it. At least when the architects arrive, the galaxy will not face them on its knees. It will face them standing. The Council's armada closed in, weapons primed to obliterate Earth once and for all. But as the first shots fired, something impossible happened. The stars shifted. Space itself bent. Vast shapes emerged from the void, structures that defied comprehension, silent and watching. Not human. Not council. Something older. Something patient. The architects had returned. And in that moment, both humanity and the council understood, their war was nothing but the prologue. The true test had only just begun.